I'm going to first of all introduce myself, then we get into what we have for you today. So, my name is Ivy Liberty. I am a PhD fashion researcher, and I'm also a lecturer at the University of Huddersfield. I teach marketing, fashion design, marketing, and production. I teach undergrad students, and I teach oh, Clinton, what's up, how you doing? Woo, 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 woo. Thank you so much for joining in. Oh, that's surprising. Oh my God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yes, I teach fashion design, marketing, and production at the University of Huddersfield, and I also I teach undergrad students, second year, and I teach master students, postgraduate. And I'm also doing my PhD. I'm in my final year of my PhD, so um, it's been a very long road, but we're getting there at the end of the day. So if you're joining us for the very first time, this is all you need to know about me. So we'll be talking about how to create your own fashion collection. Now, if you've been with us last week, we talked in depth in how to we talked a lot about how to create your own fashion collection. We talked about the importance of primary research. We talked about the importance of secondary research. And today, what we're going to be focusing on is how to utilize all your research that you've gathered. We're going to be talking on how you can utilize them, how to make sense of all of the research that you've gathered. And yeah, I can see people joining in now. Thank you so much for joining in. If this is your very first time, welcome. Please, before we get started, don't forget to hit the notification button. And oh, thank you so much, Atibu Concept. Whoa, she's here. She's our top subscriber. Like, she is always on point when it comes to comments, when it comes to giving us useful feedbacks. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you, guys. So yes, so if you're joining us for the very first time, in case you missed the intro, my name is Ivy Liberty. I am a PhD researcher, fashion designer, and a fashion lecturer at the University of Huddersfield. So we have been talking about, for the last week, we started this series on fashion design and how to create your own fashion collection. So we talked about the importance of collecting research, primary research, secondary research. But today, what we're going to be focusing on is basically how to utilize those research that we've gathered and how to make sense of it all. So as much as I'm going to be talking to you all, I will be on your screen, but as much as we're going to be doing that, I'm going to be taking you kind of like on a journey on my sketchbook, what I've gathered, how I've utilized my research. And if you've got any questions, just ask me along the way. But we're gonna be, sometimes you're gonna be seeing me on your screen, sometimes I'm gonna be taking the camera right into my sketchbook so you can see how I've gathered my research and how I'm utilizing it. So that's what we're gonna be focusing on today. So if you've gathered your primary research and your secondary research, just to reframe everything or just to summarize what we met last time when we spoke about research, we talked about primary research. What is primary research? Primary research are the kind of research that kind of like making sense of everything around you, like your table, like your furnitures, like music that you listen to, like a movie that you've just seen, like an art piece that you've gone to the museum to see, anything like maybe a TV program or a collection that you've seen from somewhere else, and the initial ideas that comes out from those things around you. What that is kind of like you gathering your primary research. So it's basically creating something out of nothing. If you were here last time, and if you are not sure of really what I'm talking about, you can click on the link. I think it's on the video content that we have on our page. Just click on that link and it takes you straight to the first series that we did, or the first episode of this series that we did about fashion design, and that will break, tell you everything on like a bullet point, or you just get you started in your fashion collection journey. That is that link. You click on that link and that will take you straight to that. So so your primary research is basically the primary thing that you see around you and make sense of that, while your secondary research is basically research from like pictures that you like, maybe flipping through your magazines, getting inspiration, something like this. This is from, I just tore this out from a magazine. So information that you gather through the internet. So is basically somebody has done that research to create something, but you taking that research to create something else. So basically it's kind of like a secondary research, because the initial research is not your research, but you are kind of researching based on someone's research, if that makes sense. So that's your secondary research. So what you do with your primary research and your secondary research in creating a fashion collection is what makes you stand out. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So when you gather all your research, like the last time we released a very short video, is in our shorts content on our channel. So we released a short video on, it's just a short piece that I took you on a journey for me. I mean, going through my primary research, or going to gather my primary research. What I did in that video was basically taking you guys through London. I went to Tate British Museum, and I just went there to go check out the latest art piece that is out there, exhibition and everything. So I took pictures of what I liked, and I was not really keen about seeing everything, but I already had in mind what I wanted. So I just went straight to each artist, their studios, and I just took pictures, did some note taking. Welcome guys, if you're just joining us, people are joining us now, thank you so much for joining in. So so what I did was basically I took pictures of the art piece that I liked and recorded it. I did some sketching as well. So what I did with that is what we're going to talk about today. So once that was done, basically it's just to get an idea. Once you start with an idea, it could be anything. It could be a sound, it could be an instrument, the bass of the sound, the tenor of the sound, if you're into music. It could be anything. So when it comes to fashion design, there are no rules guiding you to say, oh, this is right and this is wrong. No, there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to creating your own collection. What it's all about, basically, when you're designing or creating your own collection, is important for you to know that you are the originator, you are the creator, you are the painter, you are the person that says this is what it is. And anyone that vibes, they vibe. If they don't vibe, that's up to them. But you are the masterpiece. That is, you are driving this car, you're in charge. That is basically what you need to have at the back of your mind when creating your collection. Now that's what makes you stand out from any designer, and people are like, oh, how do fashion designers, how do they get inspiration every year? And some fashion houses, they get to design, like they get to create 3 collections in a year, like the spring summer collection, autumn winter, resort collection. Some just bring out like a simple collection. Some people go as like couture collection as well. So some people start from 2, 3, 4 collection within a year, and you'll be wondering sometimes, you'll be like, how on earth are they able to bring out designs? And sometimes within the collection they have up to 20 pieces, they have up to 30, 40 pieces. They have 60. So depends, and they go on and on and on. But the truth of the matter is, they are always, when I tell you always, the fashion designers that stands out, they always utilize their primary and secondary research, mostly their primary research, and you can just see, some people say, oh, this piece is what £5,000, this piece is what £2,000, depends, and you're like, oh, that's expensive. No, you're not just buying the garment, you're buying the whole story behind that garment. So as a fashion designer, for you not to stand out, you need to know the basics, and that's why we're doing what we're doing today. So we've collected our primary research from different avenues: music, cinema, movie, art piece, artwork, your surrounding, everywhere. You've collected this primary research. What do you do with this primary research? Because again, you've got a lot of information. I mean, when I got back from the museum that I went to, I had a lot of pictures to deal with and sort out, because I was like, oh my God, I'm bombarded with a lot of ideas. So the next thing for you to do in that situation is you need to spread everything out. Now, maybe you took them using your phone, you took a picture using your phone. What you need to do, if you have access to your printer, all you need to do is to print those pictures out. What I normally do, I expand those pictures. If they're kind of small pictures, what I do, I try to use my phone to expand them or scale them up so that it can. The reason why I do that is basically to give me another perspective or another way of viewing what I've just taken, what I've just captured. So instead of me just taking it the way it was, like the size it was, I would kind of like scale it up to see ideas, to spark up ideas. That's what I was supposed to say. So when you do that, finish your taking your pictures, go straight to your printer, print them out, just lay them out. So how you organize your research, this is your primary research now, not your secondary research. Your primary research, how you organize this research, maybe the product of your primary research or the work that you've just gathered. What you do with that, you start sorting them out. So what I do is basically I either color code them. So for example, if you've got like art piece that are kind of in the colors of, maybe in the color palette of greens, blues, yellows and stuff, I sort them out color by color, if that makes sense. So when I do that, it's kind of like I'm sorting them out and organizing them so I don't get confused. If I don't do that, I either sort them out by the shape. Say I have a particular shape that has like a circular shape or a square shape or a triangular shape and stuff like that. I sort them according to shapes. Or if I don't sort them according to shapes, I have to look within all my collection. What are the things that kind of like you're grouping things together, so you see the similarities within your art piece that you've or your art pieces that you've gathered. See what makes sense. So even if they're from different artists, all you need to do is just to sort them, maybe use color coding or use forms, use structure, use detailing. So if you've got like, maybe you've got an art piece that has zigzag details and stuff, and you have another one that has, even if it's not zigzag but a kind of like square lines, just sort them, group them in one pile, group another thing in another pile. So when you do that, you're kind of organizing everything so you don't get everything everywhere, because the last thing that you need as a designer, and especially if you are working with, maybe you're working on a project and you have, I don't call it a deadline, I call it a timeline. And if you've be given a timeline and say, okay, I need this piece to be ready in 2 months or 2 weeks, you don't really have that time to waste in, thinking of, oh, where do I start? The best way to do that is by organizing your primary research. So once that is being organized in different piles, you can even go ahead to name different piles that you've organized. Once that is done, you're going to start cutting them out. Like, I've got this, for example, I've got this from the art museum. So what I do, so we've got this color, this color, this color, this color. What I do, if it's within one picture, what I do is to cut all the reds out, sort them out, put them somewhere, then sort out the blues, cut them out and put them somewhere. So what I mean by cut out is basically, I've done one here. There's an example here. So I've just cut this out from a magazine. So just cut them out. It doesn't have to make sense. A lot of people get stuck in this part of research. They're like, I'm just cutting out things and it doesn't even make sense. That is the most important thing. Just go with the flow. Cut them out, and after that is done, you're gonna sort them out later. But the most important thing for you to do is to cut them out and sort them out later. It doesn't have to make sense at the beginning. Just go with the flow. That's what I advise my students, okay? So once that is done, you've sorted out them according to colors. You sorted them out according to structure or shapes or details, you know, different orders that you've sorted everything out. The next thing you need to do is to now think of how this is going to make sense visually. So when you're looking at it, you're like, okay, how is this going to make sense visually? Like when you see it, how does that make sense? If you arrange them in a certain order, or if you draw them, or, you know, put them in a certain group, is that going to make sense? This is why you need your sketchbook. This is my sketchbook. I've got my sketchbook. So I'm going to show you how I came up with just this painting, this one here, how I came up with the rest. Yeah, so you need to, so when you've sorted them out, you start gluing them or sticking them to your sketchbook one by one, and you're going to ask yourself, how does this make sense? How am I going to put this together to make sense? The first thing that you need to do, once you stick them all out on your sketchbook, for me, if I've got a lot of work to go through, I would settle for maybe one or two designs or two paintings, or one or two paintings. The least I would settle with one. And the reason being is, if you overflood your thinking, I always advise people less is more. So it's better for you to start off with maybe one or two paintings that you really like and elaborate on that one piece first, because one piece can give birth to thousands of designs, and people get stuck and people like, oh, how is that possible? Is really possible. And that's why you see people, when they come out with different collections, they don't run out of ideas, because they've expanded their thinking to think beyond that one piece. So for instance, or for example, if you're saying, okay, how is this one piece going to create three pieces? So if you have, for instance, this is what I have here. I have this picture. Yeah, this is just a picture. But what I see in this picture, I see different lines, and that's what I've done. I've used my pen to highlight the lines within that picture. So I'm seeing different lines, and I'm seeing different colors. I am seeing different strokes. But within that same picture, I can see different shapes. And those shapes are going across each other. Like, it's kind of like, it's like the artist just threw in different shapes. It's kind of like you're throwing things into a bin, and it's not in any order, but you're just, you know, taking everything there. So me as a fashion designer, what I do in that kind of scenario is I take note of the different strokes. So I kind of take them in bite size. Like, I take this, I'm very interested in the jigsaw kind of vibe that I'm getting from this, and that's why you've seen some highlighted parts there. Here, if you can see it clearly, so you can see some highlighted parts that I've done, and those ones that I've highlighted with a black pen are the kind of shapes that are really interesting. I find it really intriguing. So I'm kind of like, okay, this is what I want to go with within this piece. So once you've identified what your kind of like your inspiration is geared towards, if you've seen a particular shape or design, within that painting or artwork or even that song, it might be, okay, for instance, for a song, it might be the chorus, it might be the melody, it might be the words in the song, the lyrics, it might be, oh, someone is singing about a love song, and I pick out that word love. What are the things, when you think about love, what are the emotions that run through your head when you think about love? Those kind of things, you write them down. That's when you get your primary research from music. Maybe it can be a movie. Maybe it can be the way the actor portrays his character in a certain way. It's kind of moody, it's kind of tough, it's kind of dark. So what is that thing that strikes a chord in your heart or your instinct or your ideology to say, you know what, I really like this? Hold on to that thing and elaborate on that. That is why we were talking about the importance of gathering your primary research. Now you have this art piece. Within that art piece, look for different shapes, different colors, different vibes, different moods, different scenarios within that shape that strikes a chord in your heart, and just put them down. So that's what I've done here. So the first thing I did when I saw this painting, I was like, this picture right here. The first thing I did was, it was a square shape. But what I did, I had to rotate this shape into kind of like a diamond or like an irregular shape. It's not like the traditional square. So I had to turn it around to give me that kind of cubit or diamond shape. And what I did was, after doing that, I had to highlight the interesting part within the drawing and the painting. And the first thing that I noticed within this art piece, the first thing I noticed were the structures, the displacement of lines. So I recorded that and I started drawing different lines around it. Different lines, yeah? So then, once that was done and I saw it was really nice, I said, okay, you know what? What am I going to do with this line? So I started shading those lines and started introducing more lines to it. So at this point, you just want to try every avenue for this art piece to make sense. So the first thing, remember what I said. So the first thing that I took from that painting was I had to take, okay, I can see there are different lines within this painting. I like that. I'm going to go with those lines. So when I took those lines on board, I had to expand it. That's why you see it's kind of, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to change the position of this and just rotate this so you can see what I am talking about. I hope you can see it, guys. So I took the lines within this painting. If I can just go, if I can zoom in, you see there are interesting lines within this art piece. So I took that and I started drawing them out just to bring them out to see what I come up with. So when I did that in different, I placed them in different angles just to see. And once that was done, it was basically kind of like, okay, this is kind of interesting. So I started introducing more. The next thing that I saw within this piece were different shapes. And these shapes were not it was not in a uniform order. It was kind of displaced. It was everywhere. So shapes like this one. So you can see this, it's not a regular triangle. This is not a regular square. So these are different shapes within this art piece. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So with this curved shape, I started introducing larger curved shapes within the drawing that I've initially drawn on my sketchbook. So as you can see, you're seeing different shapes or strokes. All this came out from in each shapes that I've noticed within this art piece. And that's what I've done here. So what I've done, so the next thing you're going to do is, after you identify whatever strikes a chord in your thinking, what you need to do is to elaborate on them by drawing them in larger scale. And that's what I've done here. So with the curve shapes, then I've kind of scaled that up to make it make sense. And I just try to make it in, draw it in different orders to see how it's going to work. And that's what I've done. So another thing that I noticed the grayness of this painting or this art piece. So it's kind of dark and it's kind of dull, the color, but I kind of like that. So it gives me that kind of vibe of a moody scenario. So what I did was introduce shading to what I've previously drawn. So I started shading each piece like you can see here. So I shaded them based on the mood that I'm getting from this painting. As you can see, it's kind of gray and dull. So I started, introducing shades to this. And with those lines as well, I started placing little, like more tiny strokes of lines within those those. So I've done the large lines. So I was like, how about me within those large lines, why don't I introduce smaller lines to it? This is me just, I'm not even sure of where this is gonna go, but I'm just going with whatever my vibe is telling me. That's basically what I'm doing. Like I said, there are no rules to this, so I'm kind of going along with the shapes. I like this shape, so what I did was to trace this out and printed this design. I had to kind of like enlarge it. Then I printed it out on a white and black paper, and this is what I got. So once I did that, I had to stick this down and reinforce the lines using my marker or my pencil, and that's what you're getting here. But this is just exactly what is here. So I enlarged it and created another kind of look for this. And the reason being why you want to do that is basically you're playing with ideas and seeing how these different shapes can make sense when you scale it up or scale it down. So even with all of this, you can create a collection out of this. Just with this that I have, as you can see, it's a lot. So a lot of this can go into your fabric printing. Hello, Mari Fashion. Welcome back. Welcome all the way from Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. So as you can see, we've got a lot of things to take from here. I can even concentrate on just this part. I can make a collection from just this. I can go ahead to say, okay, I'm going to concentrate on just this part. I can say, okay, no, let me concentrate on this. So the beautiful thing about exploring just on one concept is that you can even make a collection for this year and go back next year and go back to this same painting and create another collection from this, just what we've done here. And that is the importance of you utilizing your primary research. So from all this that I've done, which is the primary research, I had to go get my secondary research. This is where I had to go through magazines, cut out similar shapes. So remember, we saw that the most important thing here for me basically are the strokes and the lines. So I had to look within those magazines to see anything that corresponds with what I saw from this painting, which are lines, shapes, displacement of shapes and everything. So I went ahead to get this is a cutout from a magazine. So this is my secondary research. So the reason for your secondary research is basically enhancing your primary research to make it make sense, push the idea further. That's the reason why I had to look for anything that corresponds with shapes, lines. So as you can see within this cutout piece, is kind of like a diamond jewelry or whatever. I think they enlarged it. So I kind of like it because of the displacement of shapes and lines. So I had to stick them there. And don't worry, it doesn't have to make sense, but just put them there because you are going to deal with that next. So once I got that, I've drawn this out. So I went ahead to elaborate on this again. So I'm going to just flip this way. Now, what I've done here is basically gone through magazines as well to get kind of like a silhouette or where I can place all my primary research ideas and look for kind of like a model and kind of mount every shape that been very interested to me from my primary research. So what I've just basically done is just cut this model out and try to place different ideas that's coming to my brain. So remember, we were dealing with strokes and lines. I had to get my fabric. This is a calico fabric or Muslim fabric if you're in the United States, but if you're in the UK, this is a calico fabric. It's a cotton, 100% cotton. So what I did, I was like, okay, instead of me just drawing and drawing and drawing, so what next can I do with this piece? I had to take my fabric to see the texture, how that is going to look on anything. So I took that out like a sample. Remember, we're still dealing with the shapes and lines. So I had to say, okay, how am I going to create lines on a fabric? Because at the end of the day, we're going to be dealing with fabrics. So why not utilize your fabric? So I started playing and messing around with fabrics. So I kind of like this. So I just placed that anywhere. And again, this doesn't have to make sense, but this is kind of generating more ideas for me to work with. So I kind of pleated this out using my pressing iron, press that out, use iron to create those lines, which is what you're seeing here. So you can even do it anyhow you want to do it. You can do it anyhow you want to do it. This can even be a sleeve, you know, so play with things. That is based on these sketches that I've done here. So on this, going through my secondary research, I found a very interesting model wearing kind of, you know, see what they've done here with the pleats. It's kind of giving me this vibe as well. So this is why you need your secondary research, because your secondary research is kind of aiding your primary research to visualize how this is going to make sense on the body. And so what you do with your secondary research is to gather everything that goes close to your primary research. If you see anything that corresponds with that, just cut that out, put them on your sketchbook and try to see how this, like for instance, this is a gray pleated skirt with a really nice detailed pleats. So you can see the gray here. So it corresponds with my primary research, and I'm seeing, oh, this is the secondary research. Okay, how can I marry both researches together to see what comes out from this, you know? And you have to get something closer to what you're looking at. So once you have that, bring that out, cut them out and place them on your initial sketching. So this is what I've done here. Then I have another interesting pleat. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but I've got another very interesting pleat. See what I've done here with this. So this is just your calico fabric, but I said to myself, I'm like, okay, I have folded this using just the very basic fold lines. How can I make that fold lines kind of, so I've got strokes. So how can I make those strokes become curvy, like what we've got here? So how can I introduce curve and straight lines at the same time to make sense? You know, so that's what I did here, was like, okay, I'm gonna see, I've just pleated this, but what I did was to fold the edge like that and just put that idea, stick it on your sketch pad. It doesn't have to make sense. This can be kind of like a detail. You can even work with just this concept right here. This concept, you can just work with that. You can put it anywhere, you know. So with that, with all the strokes, with all these pleats and lines, I had to create something else from this. Remember, we are just working with the initial lines that we started with. So it gave us the lines, it gave us strokes, it gave us patterns. So remember, we are expanding our thinking, introducing our secondary research is what you were seeing here, introducing our secondary research and adding our primary research onto the secondary research, and that's what you've seen here. Now, having done that, what I've gone ahead to do is basically, I've written down theme ideas. So your collection has to have a theme. It has to make sense. Now that you've gathered some research, now you need to look at the theme of what you're going, the collection. So within all these things that we've gathered, the primary research that we've gathered, I have some here as well. So this is another male model that I cut out from a magazine. I have, so these are the lines again. So these are different shapes. And remember, from all these words that I've written down here, these words, they all stemmed out from just this design, this artwork. So from this artwork, what I've been able to come up with, there are more, but these are the ones that I was able to come up with. So within that artwork, I saw lines, I saw shapes, I saw forms, I saw displacement, combination. When I mean combination, so there are different shapes within the artwork. So they are different shapes, but they combine together to make it one piece. So from that artwork, I've seen combination, I've seen structure. So it's a bit structural because of the lines and the folds. I've seen jigsaw, I've seen puzzle within that art piece. I've seen harmony. And you're like, oh, what does harmony has to do with that art piece? Because at the end of the day, these are different shapes that doesn't make sense outside this artwork. But it harmonizes everything together to make it a piece. Now you can look at this and say, oh, this is a nice piece. You know why? What the artist has done is basically gathered anything and just put it there to make it make sense. So harmonizing all the shapes together, harmonizing all the lines together, harmonizing all the details together to make it a piece. So that's where I got that from. So harmony, distorted. Distorted is simply having things scattered all over the place. So you have different shapes scattered all over the place, but at the same time, it makes sense in one art piece. So that's where it came from. Then there's bold, because these lines are bold, they are sharp, as you can see from even the model, her the silhouette that garment that she's wearing is kind of structural, is sharp, is bold, even with the makeup is bold. So all of those things you're taking into consideration gathering your collection. So there's bold, there's loud. So it's loud because all this is kind of like, if you are into music, because I'm into music as well. So if you're into music and you're recording and you see there are this when you record, you see designs of lines when maybe you speak or you sing through the microphone. If you're looking at it on the computer, you see waves. So it's distorted, it's loud, it's brrr. So you see those different strokes. If you're familiar with, recordings and you see them on a computer screen, you can see different lines going up and down, or even in the hospital when, maybe they're reading someone's heartbeat, you see those different, so it's distorted, it's loud, it's bold, So visually, you can see those distorted lines going up and down, and that's what I've seen within that art piece, and I wrote that down. So I saw circular shapes, like we've initially figured out. I saw square shapes, I saw triangular shapes. So I saw pointy, I saw folds, and I saw layers, so different layers. So having written all these ideas down, the next thing you're going to do is to basically take those ideas. If you can research on just lines. Whatever comes to mind, you can now further each words and take it to the next level, following the same principle that we started. So like now for this research, for this collection, I just started with my art piece. But if you say, okay, I don't have access to the museum, or I'm finding it really difficult to gather my primary research from an art piece, what do I do next, Ivy? So you can say, okay, you can get anything from maybe like a magazine or anything. Now try and make sense, or try and bring out the theme within that painting or piece or artwork or whatever. Try and write down the things that comes to mind when looking at that art piece or that work, or that, when listening to the song, anything, just write them down. It's kind of writing your mood down, but instead of you thinking it, you're writing it down. Put it plain. Then from there, you go ahead to research. And anything that has to do with lines, if you want to further research on this, just draw them out like lines. See, this is what it is. Shapes, that's what I've done here. So the more you expand on those kind of things, the richer your research is. And it's very important that you go through this. So from those words, I was able to come up with different things. So this is distorted because this is something different from that. But how do they correspond? How do they work in unity when placed on top of each other? So this is what it is. And what I've done here is just using my pen to elaborate and just kind of play with whatever it is that comes to mind, and just try to, you know, sketch it out and see what that comes up with, what I come up with this information. And what I've been able to do as well, going through the sketchbook, I've been able to collate all the colors within this, and that's why I have my color palette here. So I can see greens, I can see blues, I can see gray, I can see almond green, I can see green, I can see pink, and you know, different colors. So I had to put that, you know, down there because that's the next thing you're going to deal with. And this is a continuation of what I've done as well. So getting this art piece, this model from a magazine yet again, then try putting her in a distorted place. Anything doesn't have to make sense, but like I said, just put that all on plain sheet of paper and see where that comes, you know, what comes out of that. And from there, I was able to get another set of color palette. So I was trying to do something else here. This is kind of like it's a calico, but I have used my sewing thread to, you know, try and create just lines and see what this comes up with. And you can go ahead to further that design or that initial idea. But at the end of the day, this all of this stemmed just from this art piece. So this is an example of, I'm just going to put this back to me now. So basically, that's an example of how you can use just one art piece to create something extraordinary. Now, with this kind of mentality or this kind of idea, you will never run out of styles. You will never run out of ideas. So now that you've gathered so now this is what we've talked about. Today, I don't want us to, you know, go beyond the normal time. So what we've touched on today, just to recap, is basically after getting your secondary and your primary research, now you need to place them in order, group them. Once they're all grouped out, cut them out, put them on your sketchbook or your sketch pad. It doesn't have to make sense at the initial stage. Once that is done, you now have to look within that art piece and see what you can call amazing. Thank you so much. Great breakdown of collection development. Thank you so much. Thank you, Milton. I love that name. I love that name. Thank you so much. So now that you've gathered everything, you're happy with what you've gathered from wherever you've taken your primary research from, it's time to start sorting them out. So that's what today is all about, talking about how you sort them out. So you've looked for the theme. You've seen what makes sense to you, maybe the lines within the drawing, maybe the shape within the drawing, maybe the color within the drawing. You've seen what makes sense to you or what strikes a chord within your thinking. Put them down so you can just focus on one thing. Even if you've seen 10 things within that art piece that make sense, but deal with them one by one. And you don't even have to deal with everything at the same time. Like, you don't even have to do or develop the whole ideas that comes to your head. So maybe you within an art piece, you saw shapes and you saw color, you saw lines, you saw details. You don't have to deal with everything. You can just start with one. One thing that I've seen and I've noticed in all my years of designing is basically one idea can give birth to a lot of ideas. And you can always go back to what you started with. And this is it. Even if it doesn't make sense at first, people fall in the trap, especially if you're in an environment where people don't appreciate common things. Like if maybe you grew up in a family where maybe you were young and you draw like an art piece, or you have kids or younger ones that draw something and they say, oh dad or mom, brother, sister, see, this is what I've just painted, and you're like, oh, go. So maybe you're in that kind of environment that are not used to things like that. It's easy for you to say, it's easy for you to just discard anything, and those things that you've been discarding, or those things can give birth to millions of pounds and dollars and everything with just one thing. So what I'm trying to say is basically, do not let anything go to waste when it comes to designing. Anything can go. Is what you make out of that particular thing. That's the thing. That's the difference. So the difference between you and another person is just what you use your creative idea to create from the nonsense, the thing that doesn't make sense. So everything in that process, put them down. If you've thought about lines within that artwork, put it down. So once that is done, then you start looking for different themes or moods that comes out from that art piece. Like I was saying, if you see the list of theme ideas that I came up with lines, I came up with shape, I came up with details, I came up with displacement, discomfort, harmony, I came up with structure within that art piece. Then you start breaking them down. And try to take them one by one. And even if you want to dare, like you want to go overboard, you can say lines, details, colors, bring everything together and just kind of mishmash everything. See what comes out from that. If it makes sense, fine. If it doesn't make sense, you put there, but you've tried it. So some people, like they used to say, beautiful mistake. Some people come up with very earth-shaking ideas from just that. So I'm thinking of 10 things at the same time. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me put them down. Lines, shapes, you're drawing it and you're putting it down on your sketchbook. And you open your eyes and you're like, oh my God, what's this? But you look within that. You have to always look beyond what is in the surface. It's kind of spiritual. Like I said it before. I said it the last time in our masterclass. I'm like, you don't just look at it at the surface. You look within or beneath that, whatever it is that you're doing. So when you see that, different ideas you start coming out, start boiling out. That's what you should preserve. That's what you should keep. So whatever comes, put that down. Then once we've gathered that, we've looked at what makes sense within the artwork, we've put that down. We've checked the theme. Then you go to your secondary research, go through magazines, paper, sorry guys. So you go you go through magazines, posters, different things. You print that out. Once that is done, then you start kind of bringing both things together, like the model that I showed you about, So anything that corresponds with the primary research, bring them together and see how that makes sense. So from the pleats that I did and the fabric manipulation that I did with this one, then when I went through magazines and different secondary resources, I saw this and this was really intriguing, so I kept it there. So I'm trying to see, okay, how is that going to work with my primary research? And that's why it's good to have both secondary and primary and see how they collage together and make sense out of it. So that's the importance. So once you have that, then the next stage is what we're going to be talking about for our next masterclass. Is going to be, now we've gathered everything, we've utilized it, we've sorted it out, we've gathered our theme within this research that we've gathered. What next are we going to do? The next thing you're going to be doing or thinking of is creating your mood board. So each collection has a mood board. A mood board, like I said before, our last conversation, a mood board is basically all the ideas that you've gathered from your primary research and your secondary research. You're just going to put it on a board like that. Like we talked about lines, we talked about shapes, put that there. But your mood board doesn't have to be messy and all over the place. It has to make sense, because your mood board is kind of what you're going to be telling your design team, or if you're working with a client, you're going to be telling, okay, client or madam, brother, whatever, whosoever that you're working with, you're going to say, okay, this is what we've come up with all the briefing. So there are two things. If you're designing for yourself, it's a different matter. But if you're designing for a client, this is where, because the client obviously is going to tell you, okay, so person, Milton, can I want you to design a collection for me. This is what I want. These are my ideas. So your job as a fashion designer is going through those stages that we talked about last, the primary research based on what your client has told you. And your question would be to the client, okay, have you gathered any primary research yet? Have you done any secondary research? Some might have done, some might not. So it's your job as a fashion designer to go through those process with your client or whosoever you're working with, and tell the person, obviously anybody that comes to you would always have a brief. A brief is kind of what they're working with, the idea of whatever project it is. So they will definitely tell you where they're working from, where the concept is coming from. So your job as a fashion designer is basically furthering that brief to the next level. And that's why they are paying you whatever they are paying you. So if you're designing for yourself, it's simple, because for this collection, I'm designing this collection for myself. So it's really simple. I already have an idea of where I'm going. And that's why I went to the art museum and I took everything that I wanted from the art museum, then collected all the pictures, printed them out, cut them out, put them in groups, because I already have an idea of what I want to do. So I put them on my sketchbook, started drawing and doing everything. That's for me. And if you have an idea of what you're working with, that's the flow. Yeah. So the next thing would be for you to create your mood board. Like I said, next week we're going to be talking about the how you organize your mood board and how you develop your designs from that mood board. Now, your mood board is going to summarize everything from your sketch work or your primary and secondary research. So your mood board is going to kind of is putting it in one box and saying, okay, this is the idea. For this collection, what I've come up with, the name of this collection is called Harmonic Distortion. So that's that, because it's my collection and that's what came to me. So I'm kind of harmony. I can see different moods going on. I can feel it, but it's distorted at the same time because it's scattered all over the place. But at the same time, it's kind of it's confined to one place, but at the same time it's messy, and I like that. So for me, what I would do with that is basically taking something, okay, it's just like mixing hot and cold together, or sweet and sour together, or salty and sweet together. How would bringing those things together, how does that make sense? You bringing clarity in this life. Thank you so much. Yes. How does that make sense when you add two things that don't even normally? They'll be like, oh, you have a bottle of water and you have a brick. How does that make sense if you put them together? If you turn the water on top of the brick, you might say, that doesn't make sense. What are you talking about? The lines that water creates on that bricks, that is something, that's a design. You put them there. So what I'm trying to say is making sense of something that doesn't normally, traditionally, it doesn't make sense. You have to make sense of it all. So for this collection, is basically taking different things together to make sense. So within my primary and secondary research, I've been able to get my theme. I've been able to get my color palette. I've been able to get the details, and I've been able to get the form and shape of how I want my the silhouette of my designs to go. Next week we're going to be talking about that. So I have already gathered all the information that I need, because you have to bear in mind, you are designing this for a body, a form. So as much as you want to go wild with your designs and your research and everything, your ideas, your creativity, you still have to bear in mind, as a fashion designer, after all is said and done, what am I basically, how is this basically going to make sense on a body? So that will be your next, and that's where you have your design development. Your design development is basically concentrating on different shapes that you've come up with from your research and drawing it visually on kind of like a sketch or an illustration, seeing how that works. So once you do that, you need to now look for the practicality of that. It's what we talked about last time when we talked about the visual interpretation of whatever it is that's coming up. So it has to be practical. We have to know where's the entrance of the garment. How does it come on the body? How does it stay? How does someone take it off? So all of that, once you, if you start thinking of your designs, you have to bear that in mind as well. You need to think about all those things, because at the end of the day, you're going to wear that on a body. You're not going to wear it on a brick or something. You're not going to wear it on a static thing or anything like that doesn't move, or non-living thing. You're going to wear that on a body. So practically, how does that make sense? That would be your next move. And that is why you have your design development from your research that you've gathered. So I'm going to stop here, but I just want you to understand the importance of gathering your primary research and your secondary research and utilizing, making sense of it all. Last time we spoke we spoke about the importance of having those things. The difference between research is in the last video, and we talked about who a fashion designer is, what there are different types of fashion designers. So we talked about that, and we talked about the different stages when it comes to designing your collection, but we are just taking beat by beat. We talked about different stages, but we are on the stage where we are utilizing our research. Is what we've talked about today. So utilizing or organizing your primary and secondary research to make it make sense. So at the end of the day, from your primary research and from your secondary research, you should be able to come up with at least 5 things: the name of the collection, the common theme within all that you've gathered. You should be able to come up with the shape. You should be able to come up with the color palette. You should be able to come up with the structure, the details, all the things within that garment. And you should be able to come up with the person you're designing for. So is it a slim fitted